I never imagined my life would unravel like a frayed rope in the grip of a dust storm, but there I was, stepping off that westbound train into the choking whirlwind of Dustwood Junction in the fall of 1887. The wind howled like a banshee, whipping sand into my eyes and tearing at my skirt as if the very land itself wanted to strip me bare. I clutched the faded letter in my gloved hand, its edges worn from too many readings, promising a new beginning with a man named Josiah Harlan, a sturdy homestead, a life of quiet partnership amid the Badlands. But as the train's whistle faded into the gale, I saw them, a band of rough outlaws, their faces shadowed under wide-brimmed hats, horses stamping impatiently. They eyed me like wolves spotting a lone lamb, their predatory grins cutting through the dust. My heart pounded, a wild drum in my chest, as one of them spurred his horse closer, his voice a gravelly sneer over the storm. "Well, looky here, boys. Fresh meat off the rail. What's a pretty thing like you doing all alone?" I froze, my valise heavy at my side, the hidden derringer in my pocket suddenly feeling too small against the vast, unforgiving frontier. Back in Boston, I'd been Eliza Montgomery, a seamstress with dreams bigger than the cramped factory rooms. But here, in this godforsaken junction, I was just another fool chasing a mail-order promise. The outlaws laughed, circling lazily, and I could feel their intent like a noose tightening. "Hand over that bag, darlin'," the leader barked, his hand drifting to the holster at his hip. Panic surged through me, not just fear, but a deep, aching regret. Had I been mad to leave everything behind for a man's words on paper? The storm blinded me further, dust stinging my skin, and I wondered if this was how it ended, before it even began. But fate, or perhaps sheer stubbornness, intervened. A shot rang out from somewhere in the haze, not aimed at me, but enough to spook the outlaws. Their horses reared, and they scattered into the storm, cursing as they vanished like ghosts. I collapsed against the depot's weathered wall, breath ragged, tears mixing with the grit on my cheeks. Who had fired? A sheriff? A passerby? The mystery clung to me like the dust. But I had no time to dwell. The sky hung heavy like a lead blanket, the winds still howling through the station's cracks, and I stumbled across the tracks to the only shelter in sight, the steps of an abandoned chapel, its steeple crooked against the gray heavens. I huddled there, wrapping my tattered shawl tighter, the letter pressed against my heart like a talisman. The town of Dustwood Junction wasn't much. A cluster of saloons, a general store, and a few ramshackle homes huddled against the Badlands' edge. But the locals noticed me quick enough. They whispered as they passed, their judgmental eyes piercing my silence like knives. "Another mail-order bride," I heard one woman mutter to her companion, a stout matron with a basket of withered apples. Poor thing. Bet her fella changed his mind. Or maybe he was a ghost all along. Their words stung, echoing the doubts I'd buried deep. Josiah's letter had been my lifeline. "I need a woman with steady hands and a quiet soul," he'd written, "one who can mend fences and soothe the storms of this wild land." I'd believed him, sold my few possessions, and boarded that train with hope blooming in my chest like a desert flower after rain. But 3 days passed on those chapel steps, the cold biting deeper each night, hunger gnawing at my insides, and no sign of him. Trains came and went, passengers bustling with their own lives, oblivious to the woman fading into the shadows. On the first day, a kindly old-timer named Hank, the depot's grizzled attendant, shuffled over with a tin cup of watery coffee. "You waitin' for someone, miss?" he asked, his voice rough but kind, eyes squinting under bushy brows. I nodded, too proud to beg, my voice a whisper. "Josiah Harlan. He promised to meet me." Hank scratched his beard, glancing at the storm-scoured horizon. "Harlan? Ain't heard that name round here. Badlands swallow folks sometimes. You best head to the inn if he don't show." But I stayed, defiance rooting me to the stone steps. Inside, emotions churned, a storm of my own. Loneliness, sharp as a thorn, pierced me. Memories of Boston's crowded streets, the factory's endless hum, the ache of a life without love. I dreamed of Josiah's arms, strong and sure, pulling me from that emptiness. Now, doubt crept in. Was I just another desperate soul, chasing illusions in the West? The second day brought more whispers. A group of cowboys, fresh from a cattle drive, lingered near the saloon across the way. One, a lanky fellow with a scarred cheek named Billy Ray, tipped his hat mockingly. "Hey there, sweetheart. If your man's a no-show, I got room on my saddle." His friends guffawed, but their laughter hid the harsh truth of this land. Women like me were commodities, easily discarded. I ignored them, focusing on the letter's words, tracing them in my mind to ward off the cold. My heart yearned for connection, for a touch that wasn't fleeting, for eyes that saw beyond my worn dress to the fire within. But as night fell, the chapel's silence amplified my fears. What if Josiah had lied? What if I was truly alone in this vast, merciless world? By the third day, exhaustion weighed on me like chains. The cold seeped into my bones, hunger a constant companion. I watched the trains, each departure a reminder of paths not taken. Hank returned, pressing a crust of bread into my hands. "You can't sit here forever, miss. Town's full of vultures." His concern touched me, a flicker of humanity in the desolation, but I clung to hope. That night, as shadows lengthened, the real danger came. A shadowy outlaw slunk from the alley. Different from the band before. Taller, meaner, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Evenin', lady," he drawled, stepping too close, reeking of whiskey and sweat. "That valise looks heavy. Let me lighten your load." My hand slipped into my pocket, fingers curling around the derringer my late father had given me. "Step back," I warned, voice steady despite the terror clawing my throat. He laughed, reaching for me, but a distant gunshot, perhaps from a saloon brawl, echoed again, startling him. He cursed and fled into the dark, leaving me trembling, heart racing with a mix of relief and raw fear. Who was watching over me? The question burned, adding layers to my isolation. As twilight deepened into a stormy haze, the wind picking up once more, a lone rider emerged from the swirling dust. He was tall in the saddle, coat battered by the elements, horse steadfast despite the gale. He halted at the chapel's base, his gaze knowing, piercing through the chaos straight to my soul. No words at first, just that steady presence, like an anchor in a tempest. Then, low and firm, he uttered, "Time to head home." No questions, no pity, just those words hanging in the air like a lifeline. I rose, weary but compelled, my body moving before my mind could protest. Who was this man? A savior? A stranger with his own secrets? The Toma ignited in me, mingling with a spark of something deeper, an inexplicable pull toward his quiet strength. I followed him into the encroaching night, the trail winding through jagged canyons and thorny scrub. Winds whipped fiercely, tugging at my shawl, each step a battle against exhaustion and doubt. My mind raced with questions. Was this Josiah? No, the letter described a man with a gentle demeanor. This rider exuded raw, untamed power. Yet there was a gentleness in his silence, a respect that made my heart flutter unexpectedly. The path grew treacherous, rocks shifting underfoot, shadows playing tricks. But he rode ahead at a pace I could match, never rushing, never glancing back with impatience. It felt like trust, fragile and new, blooming in the midst of peril. Finally, a modest cabin materialized in the dim light, logs scarred by time, chimney puffing smoke like a weary sigh. It was no grand homestead, but a beacon of raw authenticity amid the wild frontier. He dismounted, holding the gate for me without a word. Inside, the faint heat from the stove wrapped around me like an embrace. The room was sparse, a worn table, rifle rack on the wall, a single lantern casting long shadows that danced like memories. He poured coffee in silence, handing me a tin mug, our fingers brushing for the briefest moment. Electricity sparked through me, a warmth that had nothing to do with the stove. Who was he? Why had he come for me? We sipped in a profound hush, not awkward but healing. It allowed the wounds of my past, the factory's grind, the loneliness of spinsterhood, to breathe without words. In that silence an unspoken bond forged, tentative yet profound. My eyes traced his face, rugged lines etched by sun and sorrow, eyes deep as the canyons, holding stories I longed to unravel. A flutter in my chest, attraction, gratitude. It stirred emotions I'd long suppressed, a yearning for connection that made my pulse quicken. He fetched a rough blanket from a trunk, draping it near a makeshift bed without fanfare. "Bolt the door when I head to the barn," he said, voice gravelly, advising against the night's perils. Alone, I secured the latch, sinking into the bed, drifting into uneasy but fearless sleep. The cabin's walls shielded me from my forsaken weight, and for the first time, hope flickered. Not for Josiah, but for this enigmatic man. Morning broke with pale light filtering through cracks. I rose to the scent of brewing coffee, stepping outside to find him. Elias, as I'd soon learn, tending chores. Without prompting, I kneaded dough for biscuits inside, the rhythm soothing my frayed nerves. He returned frying bacon, and we ate side by side, steam rising like a veil over our emerging companionship. The simple act felt intimate, his presence a balm to my soul's aches. Curiosity bubbled up. "What's this place called?" I asked. He replied gruffly, "Ain't got one, it's just earth and sky," echoing the untamed spirit of the West. His words resonated, stirring a sense of belonging I'd never known. Later, spotting an overgrown plot behind the barn, I began clearing weeds, hands blistering but determined, reclaiming soil long neglected. It was therapy, each pull of root unearthing my own buried strength. Digging deeper, I unearthed a tin box with faded letters and a tintype. Him younger, beside a woman with haunted eyes, hinting at lost love. My heart ached for him. What sorrow had he endured? I rebraided untouched, sensing its weight. That evening, over stew, I mentioned it vaguely. "Some ghost ain't ready to ride off," he admitted softly, his vulnerability cracking my defenses. Our eyes met, and in that moment, emotion swelled. A tender pull, the first whisper of love in this harsh land. But danger lurked. A sudden downpour turned the nearby creek into a torrent. I rushed to save the budding garden, water rising fast, nearly sweeping me away. Panic gripped me, memories of loss flashing, my parents' untimely deaths, the isolation that followed. Then strong arms pulled me back, Elias, soaked and fierce, our bodies clinging in relief. "Don't you dare leave me fightin' this alone," he growled, but his eyes held fear for me. In that embrace, wet and trembling, a spark ignited. Desire mingled with gratitude, my heart racing not just from fear but from the heat of his touch. Next morning, I found Elias Blackwood scratched on a feed sack, a subtle gift cracking his solitude. Dialogue built, weather warnings, tool needs, each word a bridge acknowledging my strength. I repaired a tear in his shirt by firelight. He murmured, "Ma had that touch," evoking shared memories of warmth. Evening tea became ritual, sips punctuated by flames as crackle. Silence a canvas for trust. Then, at dusk, intruders rustled cattle. Elias confronted them, drawing his revolver with steely resolve. "This land's mine," he thundered, a single shot echoing as he drove them off, his masculine grit on full display. Watching from the porch, fear and admiration warred within me. Fear for his safety, admiration for his unyielding spirit. As he returned, bandaged a graze, our eyes locked, and I felt it. Love's tentative bloom, pushing against the thorns of my past. The quiet evolved into glances and nods, healing wounds through presence. But as night fell, whispers of more threats lingered, outlaws, floods, the unknown. What secrets did Elias hide? Would my heart survive this wild love? The questions pulled me deeper, into a world where survival meant opening to the man who'd saved me. Body and soul, the morning sun crept over the Badlands, spilling gold across the Montgomery spread, but it did little to warm the chill in my bones. I stood in the yard, my hands still dusted with ash from the letter I'd burned the day before. Josiah Harlan's words reduced to nothing but a fleeting curl of smoke. The act had felt like cutting a tether, freeing me from the ghost of a man who'd promised a life he never intended to give. Yet, as I gazed at the cabin's weathered logs, Elias Blackwood's shadow moving inside, a new weight settled in my chest. Freedom was a strange thing out here. It didn't erase the past, only reshaped it into questions that clung like burrs. Who was Elias, really? What ghosts haunted the man who'd pulled me from the chapel steps? And why did my heart stutter every time his eyes met mine, like a spark catching kindling? I shook the thought away, turning to the garden plot I'd begun to tame. The soil was stubborn, clumped with years of neglect, but I knelt anyway, digging with a borrowed spade, my blisters raw, but my resolve sharper. Each weed I yanked felt like pulling a doubt from my mind. Doubts about this place, about myself, about the man who'd brought me here without a word of explanation. The wind carried the scent of sage, sharp and clean, and for a moment I let myself believe this could be home. But the Badlands didn't hand out promises lightly. As I worked, a shadow fell across the dirt. Not Elias's, but someone else's. I looked up to find Billy Ray, the cowboy from town with the scarred cheek, leaning against a fence post, his grin all teeth and trouble. "Well, "Ain't this a picture?" he drawled, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. "City gal playin' farmer. You sure you're cut out for this, sweetheart?" His tone dripped with condescension, but his eyes held something darker. A challenge, maybe, or a warning. My grip tightened on the spade, the derringer in my apron pocket a cold comfort. "I'm where I belong," I said, voice steady despite the pulse hammering in my throat. Billy Ray chuckled, stepping closer, his boots crunching the dry earth. "Belong? With that lonesome drifter in there. Folks say Elias Blackwood's got secrets heavier than a loaded wagon. You sure you know what you're signing up for?" His words stung, not because they were new, but because